Okay, I think we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of our TEPSA Presents, our bi-monthly series where we just bring you all kinds of topics that are timely with experts from around the country sharing their brilliance. My name is Todd Nesloney, and I'm the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership here at the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. I have been so looking forward to this conversation today with three of my favorite people on the planet. And why? Because these people were who we were supposed to be all presenting together at South by Southwest EDU in March in Texas. And it didn't get to happen. So what this means is for everybody watching live today, you're pretty much going to get to see our special South by Southwest presentation, but with a little bit of twists because of COVID. So we've got tons of great literacy ideas to share with you today. But before we do, I want each of my friends to introduce themselves. So LaQuita, why don't you start?
Hi, I'm LaQuita Outlaw. I'm the principal at a middle school in Bayshore Middle School. I have over 1,400 babies in grades 6 through 8, and so pleased to really be friends with all of these amazing literacy leaders and to be here tonight with you guys. Now, Alice, what about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Alice Lee. I'm the proud principal of Richmond Street Elementary School in Los Angeles, California. And yes, this is a great group of people that I'm here with today, and we don't say no to Todd. We always say yes to Todd. Todd asks, we say yes. So glad you guys could join us. Hi, everyone.
Hey, everyone. My name is Don Vu, and I've been an educator for 24 years, over 24 years now. The last year, I've taken a sabbatical from my principal position at Barrett Ranch Elementary School. And before that, I was a teacher in Oakland Unified. But right now, I am a stay-at-home dad and amateur gardener, and I do some writing.
Well, I am so thrilled about tonight's conversation. So for those of you joining us tonight, we are going to be talking about literacy ideas with a twist, because we all have a big passion for literacy. And in all four of our schools, literacy was a heavy focus for us, just building that love that made kids understand that reading was more than just to educate their minds and their hearts. There was so many other elements to it. And so as we share today, we're going to share with you all some literacy ideas, but also talk about how you can kind of manipulate those and make those fit even in times of COVID. Because as we know, as we start school this fall, we don't really know what that's going to look like. Whether we are on the East Coast with LaQuita, the West Coast with Alice and Don, or down here in the South in Texas with me and most of you who are listening, we don't know what things are going to look like come this fall. But we want you to be able to have a treasure chest of ideas that you can take back with several different variations of how it may work with your area. And then as we wrap this conversation up here in a little bit, we will also share with you some books that we're currently reading that we love, because all of us are big book talkers and big readers. And so we've got some books that have just really touched our hearts recently that we want to share with all of you. So as we jump in today, I want to start with LaQuita. LaQuita, what's a literacy idea that you have to share?
Well, I have to tell you, developing that literacy culture is by far one of the most important actions that a literacy leader can take. And so one of the things that I sought deeply to do was to secure funding so that I could put a book in every sixth grade student's hand. And that second year, I was able to put a book in the hands of every sixth grader and seventh grader. So what I have sought this particular school year to do is, with funding through my Parent Faculty Association, I am going to look to identify at least 10 titles that I think our incoming sixth grade students would absolutely love. Then through their incoming sixth grade teacher, I'm going to put out a survey. I'm going to ask them to select, and then I'll make sure that that book is on the desk of every single kid when he or she comes back. I don't care whether that's September, whether that's January, or shucks, it could be in 2021.
Well,
We'll see.
But I know a question that people are going to have right away is, like, where do you even find funding for that? How do you make that happen?
Well, the PFA is one place where I always sought to see if they could, in fact, provide funding. I also use my Scholastic dollars as one of the ways to secure funding because with the purchase of every book, I also got a little bit of money back. And so that was always very helpful. I also asked parents through fundraising events to really basically secure a book for a kid, but also with my faculty. You know how we had the Gene Friday? Well, what I would share with people was that if they, in fact, obtained a membership in our PFA, our Parent Faculty Association, that they were essentially buying a book for every kid because that $5 or that $10 was really purchasing a book because the PFA was giving us that money.
I
Alice, what
love
about
that.
you? What have
Alice,
you done?
So many ideas, you guys. Actually, I wanted to piggyback on what you're doing, LaQuita. So what we do at our school every year is we do 2 whole school book clubs. We do one in the fall and we do one in the spring. And what I do is I get a book for all the teachers so that they're all doing a read aloud and they're doing something called the grand conversation. So we pick books that are purposely kind of rich in content. And so this year, actually, because I knew that funding was going to be a little tight this year, I bought 3 for the fall. And the first one was The One and Only Bob by Catherine Applegate. So every teacher is going to get a copy of that. The other one is Drawn Together by Min Lee and Dan Santat that I'll book talk in a little bit. But beautiful book about a multi-generational family and they're from like it's like a, oh my God, an immigrant story, which is really beautiful. And the other one, the last one, is Undefeated. And so with these 3 books, we're going to start off our school year, and we'll pick some other books for the spring. But same thing like you, LaQuita, what we've done is we've taken money from our PTA, it's the Parent Teacher Association funds at our school. And I think in terms of securing funding, you just have to earmark it. Like you make it a priority and you earmark it and you say, this is the money that's going to go into classrooms and teachers and students' hands. What about you, Don?
Undefeated
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree that
Kwame Alexander, right?
Yes, the Kwame Alexander book. The one that I think it just won a Pulitzer. Oh God, I don't know. Now I'm messing up all my awards, but it got a really.
Wow, I didn't realize that it just won some awards. You know, Alice, what I love that you shared though is, you know, both of you, LaQuita and Alice, you shared great ideas for where you're getting some of the money. I think something else that we forget about is utilizing our community businesses too. Because I know when I was a principal, I would often because when you ask businesses to donate like money, many times they're like, well, where's that money going? How much do you need? But if you go and say like, hey, can you buy 10 copies of this book for me to give to a kid, then they're much more likely to be, oh, I know exactly what that is and where it's going. So for sure. And I'm always like, yeah, and we'll put a sticker inside saying this is donated by Ace Hardware or wherever it is. And so that has always been really neat too. But Don, I know you were going to share something too.
No, I was just going to add on to the funding issue. And I can imagine how difficult it will be this year, this upcoming year, and probably for the next few years, considering budget cuts and all that. But I just remember that funding does have to be a priority, right? You have to make sure that you set aside money for books. And a couple years ago, we decided to build our classroom libraries, and we said, okay, the first thing we're going to put on the budget is money for classroom libraries before anything else, before conferences, before any of that. The extra stuff. I know it's going to be more difficult nowadays, but you definitely have to have that mindset if you really want to build a culture of literacy in your schools to really prioritize that before anything else. And you know, the one thing that I was going to add is, you know, as far as ideas is, I kind of look at the summertime, you know, preparing for summer, preparing for kids to read during the summer as a way to kind of to continue to build that culture. And right now, you know, in our age of pandemic, I think this is we kind of have to look at it like an extended summer break, right? Where you have kids at home, and how do you get kids engaged? The one thing that we did, I thought was pretty cool for the last few years, and it became a tradition at our school, was I asked teachers to take pictures of themselves, photos of themselves reading whenever they went on vacation. And that was pretty cool because, we would get like pictures of teachers reading on roller coasters going down, those pictures where they come down on that drop, right? They would pull out their books and pretend to read, and then, the picture would come out. But we would take those pictures, those photos, and we would make them posters, call them Broncos Read. Broncos was our mascot. And we would title them Broncos Read and post them throughout the school. You can do that right now because people are at home. You can do that, teacher A reading from their backyard or reading from their kitchen. And I think it's an important reminder for kids that, we're all readers. And it's fun. It's fun. A couple of years ago, I went to Vietnam and took a trip of a lifetime. Went to Vietnam, and I found near the city of Hoi An in the countryside of Vietnam a rice farmer on a buffalo. So I stopped the car and I was like, hey, came up to this guy and I said, hey, can I take a picture of me reading on the buffalo, the water buffalo? And he looked at me and was like, okay, this guy's crazy, but go ahead. So I took the picture of myself on the buffalo reading, and I, made that a poster, and the kids loved it. And I think the staff did too. But, that's one thing that people can do just to kind of continue that conversation to model us reading.
Don, you said several great things there that really stuck out to me. One was when you were sharing at the beginning about making sure that funding was there for classroom libraries, even if it was before PD, and just making sure that you're prioritizing it. And for our leaders who are listening today, I think that's important that people know what you prioritize based on where you put your money. And so if literacy is important to you, you find a way to make it happen. So I love that you said that, but I also loved what you said about kids need to see all of us as readers. And I just thinking right now, I'm brainstorming like, oh my gosh, I could think of so many cool ways to make posters of teachers reading everywhere. But even now, with us not being on campus right now, I mean, even sharing out on social media and just saying, hey, look where Miss Smith is reading today and what she's reading, and having those things shared, it's a simple way to show that reading doesn't disappear just because we're not in a school building right now.
Right.
And Todd, that made me think about that article that you wrote. There's an article that you wrote about adults needing to be models for children and being readers. And so it made me think of that. And Don, I thought about a contest now. The craziest sort of, reading, like poster pose, whatever, who can do the craziest one, and then it being voted on when everyone, either via social media or when everybody gets back on which one is the craziest, who wins, and then that person gets that, trophy that gets passed on from one year to the next.
That's cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Reading during quarantine.
Yes.
There you go. LaQuita, I had a question for you. You shared a great idea a second ago about making sure that every one of your incoming sixth graders gets a book and how you had about 10 from them to choose from. I know there's going to be educators who are listening or parents who are listening saying, I could put 20 books on that list and my son or daughter is still going to come and say, I don't like any of those. So what do you do if a kid tells you, like, I don't like anything that you recommended?
Well, see, my son isn't a reader, and so it has been a huge challenge being at home and trying to encourage the reading aspect of it. And so I think that one of the things that I always encourage is children will embrace what we endorse. And so in knowing our reader, in knowing our child, I think we could identify a character at least that child would warm to, that would, a story that would capture their attention at least, even if it's one of the bad boys or one of the bad girls that's not doing what he or she is supposed to. But to have a classroom teacher or a friend endorse that book would pique interest, at least for a crack open of taking a look at that binding inside.
And whenever I always hear people say, like, the kids weren't interested, I always think about who's recommending the book. Because when a recommendation comes from a parent, a lot of the times the kids are already like, I don't want to read it just because you're recommending it. But, being principals like all of us have been, it's like so many kids are like, oh, the principal said this was good. Like maybe I'll read it, or my teacher did, or the PE teacher loved this book. Like I'll check it out because I love the PE teacher or the nurse. And so I think that that's where you really run into where it goes back to what you said, Dawn, about when everybody is a reader, then those things are more naturally part of the conversation. And so, Alice, I know you've got, oh, go ahead, LaQuita.
Nope, I was going to say one of the other tactics or techniques that I used was finding a book that may have been done as a whole school read earlier. So like the book Wonder, or one that I know a lot of kids read, and saying, well, if you enjoyed Wonder, you should really take a look at this book. Like, yeah, I know that you'd like that book.
I love that. That's a great idea. And Alice, I know you've got 2 young kids at home, both elementary or one maybe moving on to middle school, if I'm not mistaken. And so how do you work with your own children about getting them to fall in love with books?
So LaQuita, like you, I have one reader that is, I have one child actually that's a reader, and then the other one is a little bit more, she needs a little bit more coaxing. I joked with the group and I said, you hold their electronics hostage and they have to read first, and then, then they get their electronics afterwards. But kind of like you, LaQuita, I look for things that the kids like, and I will buy or, get books from the library that are similar to what they've already read. So my daughter really likes graphic novels. She loves Raina Telgemeier. So I'll try to find books that are like the books that she's already read to make a connection. She's recently saw the preview for Babysitter's Club on Netflix. So I just got her back into Babysitter's Club, or got her into Babysitter's Club. She's reading it for the first time as now an 8-year-old. And that's something that I read when I was younger. And, so that's a connection piece. I think finding pieces that connect, and definitely what you're saying, I think when children see our excitement behind books, they will glob onto that. One of the things LaQuita did, I think it was 2 years ago, LaQuita, where you had this challenge, like it was like a literacy leader challenge. Do you remember doing something like that, LaQuita?
Yes. Yes.
And it was a calendar of like every single day you do something. And one of the things that I took from that was like, we made a poster that I put outside my door, my office door, and it says, Dr. Lee is reading. And I would put a picture of the title that I was reading at that time. And so anyone that came to the office, not only are they seeing, well, whether my door is closed or open, they would also be seeing what I'm reading. Dawn?
I love that. And I also love that I see Angelica commented here in the comments real quick. And I love what Angelica put in the comments about, she said, I would read books and then recommend them to 6th graders with a short video summary where I didn't give away the ending. And then she would donate them to the school library and kids could check them out. I love that idea because I think, as principals, when you go and share a book on the announcements and then you're like, hey, it's in the library if you want to check it out, people are going to like rush to check it out because you recommended it. And then when the book's not there, it creates like this pent up demand where they're like, everybody must have checked it out. I have to. I mean, think about when books take off like Harry Potter or Twilight or those explode because everybody's talking about them. They're hard to find, and you want to be lined up at midnight when it releases to get your copy so you can share that you got yours. And so that's how you build those communities. And so, Dawn, you have kids as well. So how do you kind of entice your own children?
Well, for my daughter, I'm lucky because she's a pretty happy reader most of the time, but she's very picky. And so the challenge I have is, figuring out books to recommend to her. And the reality is she'll pick up a book and she'll read maybe a chapter and she'll like, yeah, put it down. And, and the thing is, I think that we all need to remember that happens to us. And it's okay to stop reading a book that you don't like, because you want them to have a good experience reading independently. And so, so that's kind of something to keep in mind, I think, for parents. It's, you don't want to force kids to read a particular book. You want them to, right now she's reading, she turned 11. So we let her read Hunger Games, right? The first book, and she loves it. She loves Hunger Games. And she was just like, this is the best. Can I read the next book? And she finished it in like a couple of weeks. But, that's kind of the trick, right? Is to find a book that they just love, because once you do that, you just turn on something that's magical, right? And the thing to keep in mind is that if they don't love it, if they don't like it, and they want to stop reading, then that's okay. You might feel bad because you might have been the person to recommend it, like me many times, but it's okay. Everybody's different, and it's just a fun thing to see, to encourage them to read on their own, and to have them, like Alice's kids. I see pictures of them reading on their own and enjoying it. Um, you know, I love it when I kind of see my daughter in her room reading, on her own, because she's just in this different world. I mean, that's the magic of reading, and that's what we want for all of our kids, right?
Well, and and Alice, you said something that reminded me of something else really quickly. You said, you had seen LaQuita do this challenge. And what I think that was a great reminder for me is that us four are a fantastic example of we know that none of us have all the literacy answers for our campus. All four of us came from very different campuses all over the country, different kinds of students, different kinds of staff, different funding concerns or issues, but we are always talking about what we're doing, that it's like, ooh, LaQuita did this. I'm totally going to take that and make it work for me here. Or, ooh, Dawn shared this idea. Like, I'm so stealing that from Dawn, but I'm going to change it to fit my thing. And I think it's a great reminder for administrators and educators and parents to know that that's the value of connecting, is that you don't have to have all the answers anymore, because you'll know people from all over, and we all got connected in the most random way. We got brought together, and our love of books brought us as friends, and now we're always just checking in, or like, hey, I'm reading this amazing book now, or, oh, did y'all see what Don did at his school? It was so cool. I've got to figure out a way to make that work, and things like that. And so, I'd want to jump to you real quick, Don, because saying your name there reminded me, you really focused on the actual physical spaces too at your school when it came to some of that, didn't you?
Yeah. We, there was one year I was walking through the campus, and the way our campus is set up is that we have 3 rooms connected to a pod, which is like a little room that's about the size of I'd say a small bedroom, that was meant for like independent, work with kids, maybe small group work. But what happened was, throughout the years, it became more of a storage area, right? So I remember just walking through after school one day and talked to one of my teachers, Kendra Barrett, second grade teacher, and I was like, I wish we can do something with these. And she had this idea. She said, let's make some reading lounges. Let's make them into magical spaces where kids can read independently, and we can design each room based on a book. And I thought, wow, that's a great idea. We have 8 of those pods on campus, and I love the idea that we were going to clean up those areas. And so what I did was I called IKEA. You guys have IKEA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the Swedish furniture shop, the store. I called up IKEA and I said, hey, you know what? We're turning these rooms into reading lounges, where kids can read. And, our focus was building a culture of literacy at that time. And so would you guys like to do it? And I made up this thing where, we're going to have the news come out and, do an unveiling, like those home improvement shows, right? And I had no idea I had no idea that I was going to do that, but we did it. But we enticed them to come out, and they called me back a few days later. And this is, Todd, this is a part of what you were saying about making sure that you have an idea before you come out to the community, and so that they can have this vision of what you want to do. So they called me up and they said, hey, we'll go ahead and fund 2 of those reading lounges, and we'll also send over a designer so that you guys can just talk about what you want to do. So we used IKEA. I had a parent who worked at Osh, one of the hardware stores, and she she donated all the paint and all the the equipment. And my teachers, they came in on the weekends. The first 2 lounges, one was the Hatchet Reading Lounge, based on the Gary Paulson book. That was a 5th grade book, and that was the first lounge. And we invited all the staff to come one morning, had donuts and coffee, just to let them see what the possibilities were. It was awesome. I mean, it looked like a forest, and we even had like bits of a plane crash in it, and then we spent we worked with Scholastic to furnish those reading lounges with books. We ended up with 8 reading lounges after a year and a half. It was a lot of work, and we engaged kids. Kids were tagging books. We had parents come in. The parents who didn't speak English, they were like, "Dude, we'll set up the furniture for you because you don't need to know. You don't need to read, right?" So we had parents who were always out in the front, and I just asked them. I said, "Hey, can you guys come in and maybe put the furniture together?" And it was a lot of work, and they did. But we engaged the community. We had 8 lounges: Just Mercy, the Journey trilogy, Charlotte's Web, Jungle Book, Where the Wild Things Are, Hatchet, Dr. Seuss. I'm guessing I'm missing one more, but it was awesome, and it was something that we really, it just brought the community together, and it was just another way to celebrate literacy. And we ended up actually getting the news out to do an unveiling. We actually closed one of the reading lounges. We didn't let the kids check it out to come in, and we just kind of made it a secret. It was a Dr. Seuss lounge, and we invited IKEA. Promise made, promise kept, and we invited the local news station to come out, and they did the unveiling. They had the kids come out, and the kids came out. We opened the doors, and it was awesome. It was beautiful. The kids were speechless because I think they were nervous, and it was kind of a weird thing because we were like, "Okay, kids, do something, right? Be excited." But and we said, "Go ahead and go ahead and check out the books," and so they had a great time. But that was I know none of you guys have been to the school, right? But I know they still have them, obviously, but and the school,
But
they're
you did
open
an article
to everybody visiting.
You
I
did an
did.
article and you posted it, and you can see the way that you design the rooms. So if anyone wants ideas, look up Don Vu,
Yeah.
because he shared
We
it,
have
and it's
pictures.
amazing. The pictures are amazing.
It's under.
Let me tell you, he's underplaying it a little bit because I see the photos and I'm like, it's like Disney World at a school. Like, he's like, oh yeah, some parents came in, these people came. It's like, no, it looks like he hired like Imagineers to come in and build these things, and that's why I look at it and go, God, I would want to spend all day in those spaces.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing. The kids just loved it, and that's the main reason. That's the idea. So if you want to check out, thanks LaQuita for I forgot that I posted those pictures, but it's on my website. It's drdonvu.com, and I posted our process in depth and photos of the reading lounges. It's pretty cool.
I love that. Well, the other thing I love though too, Alice, you have had so many cool opportunities with authors, whether you're reaching out to them or they visit or there's virtual opportunities. Like, how did that kind of come about for you? Were you like brave enough to reach out to some of these? Because I know for me, I still get nervous reaching out to authors because of that fear of rejection.
So actually, before I answer that question, what I want to encourage all the principals or any leaders, or even if you're a teacher that is watching right now, I think we strive for perfection so often, and it kind of prevents us from taking a step and taking a risk. So my advice is just try it. If it fails, you tried it. But kind of going back into how I got connected to some of these authors, I do stalk people on Twitter and Instagram. It's kindly stalk, and what I'll do is I'll put up a picture of like us reading a book or a child reading one of their books and I'll tag them and say like, love this book, oh my gosh, thank you so much for writing this, here's the impact that you've made. And a lot of times the authors will respond back either through Twitter or sometimes on instant messenger on Instagram, or the direct messages. They'll respond, and I've become friends with a couple of authors that way and have nicely asked them if they would just kind of Zoom bomb or Zoom guest in one of our read alouds and such.
I love that.
I would say take a risk, be nice.
There's a friend that we all share named John Shu, and we love him. He works with Scholastic. He is the best book talker on planet Earth. But you actually got to work with him to do some virtual meeting with like my literacy hero, Catherine Applegate, who of course wrote The One and Only Ivan, Wish Tree, like whatever. I love her because of the animal Morphs book series because she's the author from there. And I still remember getting to meet her and crying and looking like a fool, and she cried and all this stuff. But when I saw that you got to like hang out with her virtually and talk to her, I disliked you just a little bit that day.
Oh!
Do you get nervous when you connect with these authors?
Oh my God, I screamed when I found out. Well, so John and I also I was very lucky and we were able to do a literacy talk, actually like a whole conference kind of on book joy in Korea this winter before COVID went berserk. But during our time there, we talked a lot about Catherine Applegate. And actually, she was one of the first authors that I reached out to or I tagged on Twitter, and she responded back saying thank you so much because she wrote this beautiful book called Crenshaw about homelessness, and it's a book that I wanted my students to read at our school. And then because of that connection, and John also has a connection with her because of One and Only Ivan, there's a whole story there. It's really lovely. Yes, I was very lucky. I'm very lucky to get to do a book joy live with her and John Shu.
Well, I think, but that's such a great reminder. Go ahead, Don.
No, I was going to say, I'm actually scheduled to. I forget. I was trying to look it up, but I haven't thought about our little meeting. But I'm doing a book joy live next month.
With who's the author?
It's every Thursday, right? It's every Thursday that he does
every Thursday
live.
And where does it happen? Does it happen on the Scholastic Book Fair's page?
It's on the Scholastic Book Fair's live, and then they all archived
with
all
John,
their talks.
August 6th, John Shu and Isabella Kung. No Fuzzball is one of her books.
Very cool.
So
I love it.
It's going to be so much
the
fun.
reason I wanted to bring that up, Alice, is because I think, there's so many opportunities, especially now with so many people being stuck at home, that now's a great time to bring in authors or ask them if they can come in and do some little things here or there. Don't ask them to give their book for free, people, because they're trying to make a living too. But just saying, hey, can you drop in or can you record this little message? Or there's so many cool ways to do that. Now, LaQuita, I want to jump to you real quick because, Alice, Dawn, and I are all elementary principals. And so we have a little bit more to play with to get kids to fall in love with reading. You being a middle school principal, it's a little bit more difficult. But even as a middle school, you still have book fairs that are very successful. You still find very whimsical ways to bring in a love of reading with kids. And that's why I love what you do, because so many times we can make excuses of the older the kids they get, the more difficult it is, where it's just thinking about it differently. And so what have you found that, is one of your favorite ways to entice middle school readers?
Well, candy is something that everyone loves. And so the way that I try to entice my babies with books is to make it as sweet as pie. And so one of the things that I made sure to always do was to have a book in my hand. And I think now that COVID-19 has sort of prevented us from physically being in the space, it was still about presenting and sharing books as the leader in the school building and kids wanting an opportunity to be able to talk with me, So that FaceTime really was valued by kiddies. And so I think that what now I do is offer the opportunity for them to make connections with me around books. One of the ways that I was doing that and talking about that is we always have these transition meetings where we are welcoming our incoming grade. And for me, that's the incoming 5th grade. And so I met virtually with every single 5th grade class. And during that meeting, I shared with them my passion. I shared with them that while we're in my building, that this is what we were going to do. I shared with them Catherine Applegate's Wish Tree, told them that I read that I love that, and I thought that they would enjoy it too because of the science terms and the personification. Yes, I did throw in the literacy term in there, the personification of the tree. And especially since now, that book focuses on a young man who makes poor choices and offends the race of another in the neighborhood, and how the tree gets everyone together, all of the animals and the neighbors together, and they have the opportunity to see how that community comes together. And given the times that we're in, I thought that it was certainly an appropriate book to share with the incoming fifth grade. But then I invited them to let me know about a title that they read that I could add to my to be read list. So I let them know right away, hey, I'm a reader, I add my books, and that I'm expecting them to have that touch point with me when they get in, or I ask them to email me. And so I've gotten so many emails with the titles, and that I'm
I
going to
bet.
share and post up so that the kids can see it.
I love that. And that is the perfect segue as we wrap this up of each one of us sharing something we have read, are reading, or plan to reading coming up. And I'll go first. And I'm always looking for books that will grow my own knowledge and understanding, that feature voices that are different than my own, with all kinds of characters. And I've really fallen in love lately with books that have multiple authors. And one that one of my former teachers recommended to me that I just started and am already absolutely loving is called Once Upon an Eid, E-I-D, and it's stories of hope and joy by 15 Muslim voices. And so I love that as you go through and read this, there's all kinds of stories, and some of them are written out while other ones are in a graphic novel format. And so there's all kinds of ways, no matter what kind of reader you are, that you get to walk away with such varying perspectives that for me, they're very different than my own, but just as equally as important. And as everybody knows, especially with what's been highlighted recently in our country, the more that we can amplify the voices of others and the more that we can learn people's stories, the better people we become. And so I'm absolutely in love with that book, and I can't wait to continue it. It was organized by S.K. Ali and Aisha Saeed, but it features 15 different authors in here, including one of my favorite authors, Hina Khan, who is on here, and she was also one of our read alouds that we did back in March. So, LaQuita, what do you have to recommend?
I say books are safe spaces for children to see the way other cultures and ethnicities love. And so I think that's a fabulous recommendation that I've added to my to be read list now, Todd. You always cost me. I swear, it doesn't matter when we're together. You always end up costing me money. You and Donald Miller. I swear I can't stand being around you two. But for me, I've read Black Brother by Jewel Parker Rhodes. And that book is absolutely wonderful. Yay! Yes. That book highlights the interactions that two brothers have. One is white, one is black, because they are in a mixed home. And they share the different perspectives that they have during the interactions in school. And you see the biases and how they handle them. But what I love the most is that Jewel Parker it's one of the best books that I have found that touches on how middle school children think and behave. And I have not seen that in any other book that I've read. And so she goes through how this young man internalizes that struggle, but then turns it around, makes it positive, and has then a better interaction with those who offended him earlier in the book. And so, I also learned a lot about fencing that I didn't know from that book too. So Jewel Parker is amazing. And so pick that one up if you haven't.
I love it.
Now,
Alice, what do you want to recommend?
So I just finished this book by Jasmine Warga called Other Words for Home. And it's a story about a Syrian refugee who leaves Syria and she immigrates to Cincinnati, to the United States. And she's Muslim, and she's also, the story is about how she assimilates into the American culture. And I just thought that, especially given these times, what an important story this is. And it's beautifully written. It's kind of written like in a very prose-like way. And the author is just a beautiful human. And she just really wove this story into a very relatable, it's young adult reading, but it kind of resonated with some of our immigrant students too. And so I highly recommend that.
Love it.
I think she also won an award recently for that. And by the way, Undefeated by Kwame Alexander won the Caldecott, not the Pulitzer. Oh, good God. Yeah, but won the Caldecott. Great award.
It won a really cool award.
It won a really cool. And so did
Don,
Jasmine.
what have you read recently, or what would you recommend?
Well, it's something that I reread recently that a lot of people have read. Raina Telgemeier's Guts, and
Yes.
it's a graphic novel. It's a beautiful graphic novel. I got this last summer, but it's a story. It's actually based on her real life, her true life growing up. It's a story about Raina having anxiety as a kid, and how she overcomes it. And I think it's in this day and age, with a lot of us experiencing anxiety, with our kids experiencing anxiety, especially with a lot of the future kind of up in the air right now. I know teachers are stressed. I know administrators are stressed about what's going to happen. And it sounds like, there's so many different ways we can go to start the year, and we don't even know. I mean, and for parents, I'm sure it's a big stress. So there's a lot of anxiety, within ourselves and, within our families, in our communities. And so I think this book speaks to, acknowledging that within all of us, and it helps us kind of process it. And so I recommend Guts, rereading it. I'm sure a lot of people have read it. A lot of people have it. But it's a nice reread.
And and that author is a very popular one among 4th and 5th graders and above for her book Smile and Sisters, and there's so many in there that they love. But as we wrap up today, there is one thing that I wanted to kind of end this conversation on, and Dawn talked about it just then, about the anxiety going on right now in our world. And before we went live, LaQuita and I were talking too about, both of us and all of us in this group, we're voracious readers. We love reading, like it's our decompress. We love consuming new books and going and share them with friends. But I know for LaQuita and I specifically, we were talking about how it's been really difficult to dive into a book while being on this quarantine because of all the pressures coming from so many different sides right now, and the anxiety and concern. And I know for me, I'm having trouble sometimes turning my brain off so that I can focus on the book, because my anxiety gets worked up. And I've even tried listening to some audiobooks while I work out, and I can only take 10 or 15 minutes before I have to switch it off, because even staying focused on that. And I know, LaQuita, you said you were kind of feeling the same way too. And I wanted to allow you a little bit to share that, because I want people to hear that it's okay to kind of go through these phases and struggle through it right now. And you don't have to feel like you're a bad administrator or a bad parent or teacher because you're having trouble focusing right now.
And one of the ways trying to, deal with that is that self-care piece that we encourage teachers to partake in. And one of the ways that I've made sure to do that is to take a walk before I come in and settle down, so that I can attempt to just let my mind sort of release. And while I haven't been able to even listen to a book because my mind is racing, I make sure to keep my to be read list, so that I could jot it down for a later point in time. But I try to remember that if I don't take care of me, then I won't be good for anybody else. And so it's been hard. It's been really hard.
I love that. Well, I just got to say, as we close today, I am so thankful for you, LaQuita, Alice, and Dawn, and your leadership in these times, and for making some time for TEPSA in the midst of the 1,000 other things that you have on your plates right now, but for making some time today to talk about literacy, to talk about books, to share a little bit of what we were going to share at South by Southwest in March before it was canceled. But I know that you bring a wealth of knowledge. And so from me and TEPSA, I would like to tell you each, thank you so much for sharing your brilliance with our listeners and viewers today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, guys.